You want to start now?
Yep. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Matt Bose. I'm the Assistant Director here at the library. I have a couple quick housekeeping things to tell you about before I turn things over to Doug and Dennis. Just so you know, in case of an emergency, we have exits over here and in the back, so just look for the red signs there. Please remember to turn your phones on vibrate. Okay, I know I always check my phone 3 or 4 times because I can never remember if I've done it or not. We have lots of other great programs coming up here at the library soon. So there's a newsletter in the back that you can pick up, looks like this. And you can also sign up to get this in your email if you'd like. There's a form back there to do that. One program I want to point out is Discovering Stone Walls of New England by Kevin Gardner. That's a New Hampshire Humanities event, and it's coming up at the end of the month. Tuesday, September 26th at 6 p.m. So if you haven't seen Kevin's presentation, it's really fantastic. He actually builds a stone wall on a table while he's telling you all about the history and culture of stone walls. So yeah, it's really cool. It's very, very impressive. We also have an evaluation on the back table, so feel free to leave us some feedback. We'd like to hear from everybody. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. So we have Doug Whitfield and Dennis Walsh. They are wildlife stewards from New Hampshire Fish and Game. They're going to be talking to us about bear happenings in New Hampshire. So a very popular topic this summer and spring. So thank you both for being here. I understand you're volunteers and you do this all over the state, but we appreciate you coming here to Concord and sharing what you know with us.
We enjoy it.
All right, I'll turn things over to you, Doug.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you. And this program is like Bear Happenings in New Hampshire. If you haven't seen it in the past, it's been changed. We've got some new things added and some new information. Right at the bottom of that particular photo, the credit goes to Ben Killam. And if you know Ben Killam, he's our bear rehab man in the state of New Hampshire and Vermont. He gets all of the orphaned cubs from both states and raises them as wild and teaches them how to be wild. So if you ever get a chance to look at his videos or see National Geographic's done a couple of specials on him, an amazing man, just an amazing man. And he is the bear expert. So if you ever want to know anything about bears, Ben Killam is the guy. This is brought to you in conjunction with New Hampshire Fish and Game, but also with the Wildlife Restoration Program from the federal government. Back when New Hampshire and this part of the country, North America, was being settled, this is the type of wildlife that those settlers found. And they were simply overwhelmed to find out what type of game there was here in this country. They came from Europe, where most of the fur bearers had been exterminated for use for coats and whatnot. And what little was left over there in the way of forest and wildlife was really only on the wealthy, the kings and the knights. Those type of people had private lands, and people like you and I were not allowed to partake of those. As a matter of fact, it could cost you your life if they caught you at it. So when they got here, they saw just an overwhelming assortment and quantity of wildlife, and immediately saw a way that they could financially help themselves out by trapping and shooting whatever means they could to capture those animals, send the furs back to Europe, which were in great demand and worth a lot of money. And that's what they did. And this, all of the wildlife in this picture was all native to New Hampshire at that time. And the beaver was probably the most important thing for them, because in Europe they were making beaver hats, which were the rage over there, worth a lot of money. And it would take somewhere up to 4 to 5 beaver to make a hat. This is a beaver pelt right here, and even though it looks fairly large, it took about 4 to 5 beaver to make one of these beaver hats. And the unfortunate thing was, it was such a find for them from the standpoint of financial gain, that by 1750 there was not a beaver left in the state of New Hampshire. They were entirely extirpated. And they were reintroduced, which we'll get into at a later time. Not only did we annihilate an awful lot of the wildlife, but we also cleared the land. We stripped the land in many cases. Stripped the land to send lumber back to Europe, to send ship mass back to England, and to use to build our houses here and to start our farms. So here was just another factor that destroyed wildlife, because we left them with no habitat. Wildlife must have habitat, and we pretty much destroyed a great amount of it in those building years. And just another sign of the types of things that humans do, we just about wiped out the millions of buffalo that there were on the plains. We wound up with very, very small pockets of little herds that these guys couldn't find. We didn't do it for anything other than the money. They cut the hides off to ship them back for rugs, and left thousands and thousands of bodies just to rot on the plains. And another thought, or another reason they did that, was because it was the Indians' source of food. And it was felt that if we controlled the Indians, the best way to do it would be to eliminate their food supply, and then maybe we could give them cow once in a while. And we did an awful job. So as we were destroying wildlife, by destroying them and destroying their habitat, we found that we had pretty much annihilated and eliminated a lot of species that should have been here. So in the early 1900s, there were a number of things that began to happen as people began to realize, government people and citizens and businesses, that we had done a terrible job and that wildlife was in desperate, desperate shape. So around 1900, the Lacey Act was passed to eliminate people shipping illegal wildlife from state to state. And also a lot was done to eliminate market hunting. You know, we destroyed the carrier pigeon along with the buffalo. They killed them by the thousands, packed them into barrels and shipped them to New York or Chicago to be eaten. And we completely annihilated them, and they're extinct. So wildlife people began to say, we've got to do something. And they started with those laws and fish and game departments we created. They put bag limits on certain species and set up seasons that they could be hunted and not hunted. Those animals that they would allow trapped and not trapped. So they were doing a lot of things to try to turn it around. But it worked to a certain extent, but really not as they would like to have seen. Beaver were reintroduced into New England, and they've come back strong. Around 1900, the moose were just about completely gone. There's rumor there might have been a couple of them in Pittsburgh, but they were just about extinct as well, or not extinct, but extirpated from New Hampshire. And the loggers used to kill them for their food in the lumber camps, go out and shoot a moose, and that would last that crew for some period of time. And everybody else the same way. It was just really did an awful job on a natural resource. But things started to look a little better, but they weren't what they should be. So in 1937, there was a bill introduced in the Congress of the United States by two fellows, Pittman and Robinson, a senator and a rep, who introduced a bill before Congress, and it became called the Federal Aid Wildlife Restoration Act. And what it did, it was supported by all of the businesses in the sporting goods, in the gun business. They were all for doing this. It was all of the fish and game departments. Everybody who was involved in wildlife supported the act. And what it did was it put an 11% federal excise tax on all firearms. That 11% tax, if you're how many here are hunters? Anybody here hunt? Anybody here fish? How many people here like wildlife? This just to let you get you in the right frame of mind. It's the hunters and the fishermen that pay for all the wildlife. It's the people who love wildlife, who will raise their hand and love wildlife, but really aren't contributing to support of wildlife. Hunters and fishermen support wildlife through their license fees and through their excise taxes that they pay. So anyway, this tax was instituted. If you were to go out and buy a rifle, you didn't see that 11%. It was paid by the manufacturer. It was added to the cost of the material, so when it reached the retail market, you paid $200, that tax was built in. And that tax could only be used for the restoration of wildlife and for the different projects that go to support that wildlife rehabilitation. So the states then thought, well, maybe they could use those monies that would come back to them, and many of the legislatures, ours included, tried to dip into those funds when they came back to balance their own budgets for other reasons, and if they had done that, they would automatically lose those monies. Those monies could only be spent on projects approved by the federal government. And the way it came back was, it was based on how many hunting licenses were sold and the size of your state. And New Hampshire wound up as being the smallest of them, and we get the least back. But it is a very, very valuable contribution to our support of wildlife here. It can be used for different, those funds can be used for things like this: hunter education, teaching people how to hunt, making sure they're doing it safely, and there's not a situation where people are doing things carelessly. Here you see a fellow buying a license over here at the Fish and Game Department. And the projects that those monies can be used for, coming back from the federal government in that excise tax, are those that promote enhancement of wild bird or mammal populations and are supported by the State Fish and Wildlife Agency. So we have to decide that's a worthy project to spend those monies on, as well as the federal government approving what we're going to spend it on. So it's watched over very carefully so that the monies are spent where they should be spent, on wildlife rehabilitation and reintroductions. Spent for public use and benefit of those resources. Fish and Game, as you know, is responsible for all the boat launches in the state. If you have a boat, you launch it. Fish and Game is the department that's responsible to provide all of those. And hunter education, as I mentioned before. And the benefits of these taxes is that we know we're going to get back, within reason, a set amount of finance coming back from the federal government, that we can then set up programs where we're going to do restoration work on, whether it be on streams or on habitat in different areas. We have those monies coming in, so it enables us to say, gee, we'll be able to schedule that and do that program over the next 5 years. So it is a big, big help to the states to be able to have those finances coming in. And also it's enabled Fish and Game departments to do a lot of things scientifically that in the past they used to say, we think, we guess, we hope that we're right. Now we're able to do a lot of things with tracking of animals, a lot of electronic things are being done to aid in the restoration of wildlife. Then in 1950, two other senator and a congressman, Dingell and Johnson, it's called the Dingell-Johnson Act, put a bill before the Congress again to put the same excise taxes on all fishing gear, because there became a great understanding that our rivers and streams and brooks and ponds and whatnot were in a serious situation, and we needed to do something to restore the fish population, keep it healthy, and provide those things like boat launches. And this was the same tax, and it's on fishing lures, it's on rods, and many, many areas of sporting products. And in addition, it's on motorboat fuels as well. You pay a tax, a federal tax on motorboat fuels. Those monies are used, as we say, for projects here. And you're probably all very aware of the moose population, the great growth in the moose population back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We were really seeing a large population. We got it up to about 8,000, we thought, the state. And we've got some serious problems, as most of you know. Our population now is down somewhere in the 3,000 level, and there are lots of reasons why. There's a lot of research being done to try to determine what those problems really are. We know brainworm is a serious problem again. Ticks are terrible and a great loss to moose, but also habitat. Back in the 50s and 60s was a tremendous amount of clear cutting done in New Hampshire. And when you clear cut, all of a sudden up comes all this small growth, and it was kind of like a smorgasbord for moose, because here it's coming up with young growth. They love these little furs, but once it gets tall enough, then there's not a lot of food in that kind of forest. Old growth forests really don't provide wildlife with much of a source of food. They're really not very productive. When the settlers first came here, there were a lot of old growth forests. Those old growth forests did not have that great excess of wildlife. It was along the riverbanks. It was in those areas where food was viable for wildlife. But anyway, the moose came back strong. Now we have a serious problem in fish and game. And it's not a problem here just in New Hampshire. It's a problem from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Montana. All of the states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and all of these states are seeing this tremendous reduction in moose populations. Some of them are saying the great growth of the ticks is because of the change of climate. The winters are warmer, snow's not so deep, and we're seeing a situation where the ticks have just flourished. And it's nothing for them to find a moose with thousands of ticks when they die. Also, great restoration project was the turkey. The most successful probably restoration wildlife situation in the country. We have now over 40,000 turkeys in New Hampshire, but they're all over New England, they're all over New Brunswick. They have just expanded and expanded, and most every one of you probably sees them on a regular basis. Outside of being maybe a little aggravation if they're in the yard sometimes, but what they have done is provided a source of protein for our carnivores out there in the wildlife, because an awful lot of the small game has really been decimated as well. So the turkey's providing hunting seasons and income for fish and game and sport for hunters, and also food for some of the other wildlife. Here you see a picture taken up at a place called Owlbrook in Holderness, New Hampshire. This is a facility that Fish and Game has where they teach all types of use of guns, handguns, long guns, archery. They have a beautiful building up there where they run a number of programs people can partake in. You can get involved in bow hunting clubs up there, and all free, paid for by the Fish and Game Department. And this was a facility that, from an actual cost to the state, it only cost them about $70,000, but it's over $1 million value. A lot of land was donated by paper companies when they pulled out of New Hampshire, and then some of the land was purchased and wound up with just a fabulous place. If you ever get a chance, you want to just go up and view it, you can go in and see it and find out what's available up there for the public to utilize. And with that, this is what you really came for. One thing I do want to say, that I mentioned who pays for wildlife and who pays to support wildlife. It is the fisherman and the hunter, and there's a great need for all of those non-game species, the birds, the salamanders, the turtles, all of the things that we're responsible for. There are no seasons, there are no licenses, there is no way to generate funds. So we do have a program called the Non-Game Fund, in which we encourage anybody to make a donation to Fish and Game and specify it's for non-game funds. They just announced a week or so ago, are you all familiar with the Concord blue butterfly? It's a state butterfly. We're going to have a burn over here at the airport within the next month or so. That's the only place left in the state that supports the Concord blue butterfly, and the land has to be burned off, and then it's regenerated, and it's the wild lupin that those particular butterfly have to survive, and that's the only place left in the state that you'll find that. So we do a lot of things for non-game. Snakes are a problem. We're losing a lot of our snakes. We're losing a lot of our turtles. Very, very few turtles in many of the species. Highways, take a turtle control on wildlife, whether it's turtles or bears or whatever it might be. The highways really, really decimate the wild game. And one other thing that they do to raise funds is we print a wildlife calendar, which has all photography of New Hampshire wildlife. There are samples of it up there in the back. You'll see with the other literature. And that literature, you're welcome to take whatever you want home with you. You can buy a calendar for about $15 at Walmart, which is not nearly as good. This is $10 to the consumer, and those monies go to support our non-game species. In addition, we print what's called the Wildlife Journal. It's probably, it is the only magazine that focuses only on New Hampshire wildlife and New Hampshire fishing game and articles about it. And that's a real bargain. And there are some of those samples up there that you might want to take one. Those monies go to support the non-game fund. And really, some of these wildlife non-game species are in desperate shape and need as much help as the people can give them. I think that's it. I'm exhausted. I give you Dennis Walsh.
Give me two part. All right.
Thank you.
I shared it with one. All right, my name is Dennis Walsh. I'm going to do the bear part. We split these between us. We go all over the place and do them, and it's a lot easier to split them up than it is to do a whole program. He said that there's a new program out. This is the new program starting from this point on. So you might be the first folks in the entire state of New Hampshire to see this. Don't know. I don't know if they did any last week. They just mailed it out, so. The bear research that is done in the state of New Hampshire is funded by that wildlife and sport fish restoration money that's paid in by the hunters and by the fishermen. That's where all these research programs come from, and that's what keeps the population healthy, keeps a good count on the population, and big problems. And this is the bear. This is our black bear. This is Ursus Americanus. He's a very powerful mammal. He's got strong limbs. He's got a small, round head, small ears. Those ears actually look bigger up there than what they really are. Because bear's ears, on a large bear, the head is just going to be kind of squared off. It's not going to be the pointy triangular shape. And then little tiny ears are going to be sitting up there with small eyes. They are what we call a sexually dimorphic animal. The male is larger than the female. The male's weight can run up to, well, not mine up to, how about average? How about an average male bear weight? Who can, throw me a number, somebody.
500.
500, average. Female, average?
3.
250, okay, so somewhere around 250 maybe. 250 for male, up to 150 for female. These aren't large, huge animals. You know, they're not what most people picture. So the male, he might run 2 to 250, 2 1/4, 250. He can go 300, 400, 500, 600. They can do it. And a female will go 300. It's easily done. But on the average, that's our size of our New Hampshire black bear. This is a young one. You can see he's got the pointed snout. His ears look bigger. So they come in various color phases. Not here in New Hampshire. Ours are black. They get a brown muzzle. Out west you can have a blonde one. You can have a cinnamon one. You can have a brown one, and different colors are more desirable, you know, for mounts by hunters, but, you know, if you're looking for a bear, this is our New Hampshire black bear. The eyes are small, the ears, when he grows, will be small. They might have, right in here, a little bit of blaze, a little white chest patch. Not necessarily. Their feet got 5 toes. They've got long claws. They use those claws for defense. They use those claws for finding food. That's the primary purpose of those claws, is to get them up trees, find food, and for safety. When they walk, they have a very odd gait. Both legs on one side will move forward, and then both legs on the other side will move forward. So they sort of lumber when they walk. And you look at it and you say, oh, it's a clumsy animal. No, not when it can run up to 35 miles an hour. That's not a very clumsy animal. No. They can't sustain that, but they sure can hit it. Now, historically, black bears were spread out like that. All that green is areas of black bear. And you can see that the only places that didn't support them were the very hot, dry, arid areas where the bear just wasn't going to make it. It was not anywhere near the kind of habitat they needed down there. Northern Mexico had them. But today, we're left with that. So what's the change? Well, the change is habitat change. As habitat changes, you know, the food, water, shelter, the space around the animals, the arrangement so they can get the food, water, shelter easily, as that all changes, then this is what you come up with. You get this empty area because we got farms, we've got plains out there, we've got cities, industrialization, stuff that's just not right for the bear. But you know, oddly enough, if you can see here, it says bear sightings and blue dots. Look at all the blue dots. See, nature isn't... Yeah, nature's not that predictable because in the areas where the bear aren't living anymore, they're seeing bear. Those are the bear sightings. So what's going on? You know, anytime you think you got nature figured out, it's going to change. So as it says, population is closely monitored and regulated. Well, here in New Hampshire, most definitely, and that's for a lot of reasons. That's so that mainly the bears can live comfortably with the people, people can live comfortably with the bears, and the bears stay healthy. They've got a varied diet. They eat all kinds of things. It's an omnivorous animal. Sometimes it's an opportunistic feeder, and as the seasons change, the food changes. If the food requirement changes, well then, of course, the habitat has to change as well. In the springtime, they come out of den, and the first thing they want to do is eat. So what's growing in the spring? Not much. But they can go to wetlands, and they got early grasses coming up, and there's tubers there, and there's some flowers maybe coming out. They can get leftover acorns from last fall, if they're available. Also in the woods, they'll eat winter killdeer. They will eat, if they can find them, deer fawn, moose calves. People say, oh no, they eat those. They will. Yeah, they will. Now in your backyard, you get your bird feeders hanging up. Isn't that a great source of food for the bear in the spring when he's hungry? It's easy to get to. Your unsecured garbage, your livestock, your chickens, all this stuff the bear is coming after in the spring because they are hungry. They'll go up trees. Bears are great at climbing trees. I said they got the claws. So they'll go up trees. What's growing in the trees in the spring? You got buds. You got leaves are starting to come out. It's vegetation. Bears eat vegetation. They're 85% vegetarians, 15% meat eaters. So they're going after that stuff. They get right up in those trees and feed. And you can see on the birch. See those? See those? What do you think those are? What are those? Claw marks. Yeah. And they're also safe up there. They feel secure. And if it's a female that's got young cubs, she likes to have them in trees. She feels secure about that.